I woke up and the thermometer outside my window exploded. I don't mean the display went haywire. I mean it physically blew apart, spraying glass shrapnel across the sun-baked concrete of my balcony. I squinted through swollen eyes and fumbled for my phone. The screen was hot enough to fry an egg. 10 in the morning, and the temperature inside my Austin apartment had to be at least 140 degrees. The residents' Facebook group had 999 plus messages. I scrolled up through a digital wall of wailing. Anyone's AC still running? For the love of God, help. The water's out. The taps are dry. Where the hell is building management? The last official post was from 5 a.m. Run. Try to get to basements, subway stations, storm shelters. Every man for himself. Run where? The air outside the window shimmered and warped. The AstroTurf in the courtyard below was smoking. One of the tires on a car in the parking lot had spontaneously combusted and was now belching thick black smoke. The world had become a giant microwave stuck on high, and we were the meat about to be cooked through. I retreated to the bathroom, the only room that felt remotely cool, and huddled in the ceramic tub. I was holding a tub of what used to be Cherry Garcia, now a lukewarm, sweet sludge that I sipped at pathetically. My throat was burning, my lungs were on fire, and my brain felt like a pot of boiling oatmeal. Despair seeped in, more suffocating than the heat itself. I'm going to die here, just like the neighbors I'd seen slumped in their cars, unmoving. I would rot and stink in silence. My mind hazy, I lifted a searingly hot arm. On a bizarre impulse, I reached for the handle of the frosted glass shower door next to me. Click! A strange, humid wave of heat, entirely different from the dry hell of my apartment, washed over me. It was thick with the aggressive, savory aroma of garlic, soy, and chili. My eyes shot open. Behind the door wasn't my shower. It was the soul chamber, the private room from the Korean barbecue place last night. The grill in the center of the table was sizzling, bubbling with marinade. Platters of bulgogi, pork belly, and brisket were arranged neatly on a rack nearby. A tacky, happy customer, happy life poster was taped to the wall, and the AC was blasting Arctic air. I was paralyzed in the bathtub, still clutching the carton of melted ice cream. The sugary liquid dripped onto my sweat-soaked pajama pants. A hallucination? Some kind of heat stroke-induced Final Fantasy? I pinched my thigh. Hard. Ow, wow. Pain. Sharp and real. Not a dream. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled out of the tub, my bare feet hitting the cool. To me, it felt like the North Pole, tile floor. I crept closer to the door. I could feel the heat from the grill and the cold draft of the air conditioner. Beyond the door was the normal world. It was last night. Before the wave of euphoria could fully hit, a crazier thought struck me. I stared at the sizzling meat, licked my cracked, peeling lips. Tentatively, in a voice I barely recognized as my own, I whispered to the air. Excuse me? Can I get some more Calbee short ribs? And a side of kimchi stew? And some pork belly too, thanks. The words sounded insane, echoing in the small bathroom. The next second, a wooden tray appeared out of nowhere on the floor, just inside the shower. On it sat a plate of beautifully marbled short ribs, a steaming bowl of red stew, and a platter of sliced pork belly. Taped to the tray was a small white receipt. The text was crisp. The self-heating survival door is at your service. Your emergency food order, short ribs, kimchi stew, pork belly, has been delivered. 0. 5 survival points have been deducted from your account. Remaining survival points, 9. 5. The tray was real. I could see the texture of the meat. The paper of the receipt was cool to the touch. I looked down at the pathetic carton of ice cream soup in my arms. I looked up at the glorious, bubbling, mouth-watering spread just beyond the door. A cool breeze, smelling of savory, grilled meat, wafted out. To a man on the verge of being baked alive, it was a fatal temptation. This door, it wasn't just a door. It seemed to have a world-breaking bug. It took a full 10 minutes to get my racing heart and scrambled thoughts under control. I didn't dare step through. What if I couldn't get back? What if time was screwed up over there? I dragged the tray over to my side. The meat was chilled, the stew was piping hot, and the pork belly was fresh from the kitchen's fridge. In a 140-degree bathroom, these were holy relics. I pressed my face against the cold plate of short ribs, sucking up the precious coolness, and shivered with pleasure. Then I started to study the door. It looked like a normal, sliding frosted glass shower door. Pushing it open should reveal a shower head and tiled walls. But now, cracking it open revealed a Korean barbecue joint. I slid it shut, then opened it again. Still there. Depending on the angle, I could see different parts of the private room, but it was definitely the same place. The very room where we'd eaten until 1 a.m. last night. I could even see the empty bottles of cask beer we'd left on the table. I could almost hear the faint, muffled sounds of the restaurant's main dining hall. Last night's sounds. My heart rate spiked again. This wasn't a portal. This was a goddamn time machine. A fixed-point teleporter? A manifestation of my will? Or survival points? I asked the air, or maybe the door itself. No answer. But the text on the receipt flickered and changed. New user guide. Survival points can be acquired by obtaining key resources, completing objectives, or influencing events in either world connected by the door. Points can be spent to request specific services, like the recent emergency food delivery, adjust door parameters, currently on cooldown, or for critical inquiries. Key resources? Objectives? Sounded like some cheap knockoff mobile game. But the reality was I was dying of heat. And on the other side of that door was air conditioning, food, and water. I cautiously stuck one foot through, planting it on the soft carpet of the private room. The coolness shot from the sole of my foot straight to the top of my head. It was so intense, I shuddered, almost moaning with relief. Then the rest of my body followed, stepping into the comfortable, air-conditioned space. Every pore on my skin screamed with joy. I was fully through. The AC hummed, the grill sizzled, the smell was intoxicating. I lunged for the thermostat on the wall and cranked the temperature down to its lowest setting, turning the fan to max. Then I just stood under the vent, head tilted back, letting the cold air blast into my sweat-drenched shirt. I was alive. I was alive again. Next, I bolted for the bathroom. Not the shower door, but the small restroom attached to the private room. I twisted the faucet. Cool, clean tap water gushed out. I drank greedily, then stuck my whole head under the stream. The feeling of the water, the shocking cold, almost brought me to tears. When I emerged, drying my face with paper towels, I looked at the table of food and my stomach roared. Back in my apartment, the heat had incinerated my appetite, leaving only the will to survive. But here, in this perfect climate, hunger returned with a vengeance. To hell with it. Eat first, think later. I plopped down in the same seat I'd occupied last night. I picked up a piece of bulgogi with my chopsticks, let it sizzle on the grill for a moment, and then shoved it in my mouth. Tender, savory, sizzling hot. The delicious flavor exploded on my tongue. The rush of pure happiness made me dizzy. I threw on some pork belly, scooped up a spoonful of the stew, and feasted. Eating Korean barbecue and basking in the AC, my brain finally started to function again. This door connected my bathroom to last night's, or some fixed point in time's, barbecue restaurant. I could come over, use the resources, but what about the people? Could they see me? I put down my chopsticks and walked to the door of the private room, pressing my ear against the heavy wood. Outside was the din of the main hall, clinking glasses, loud conversations, the lively chaos of a packed restaurant at peak dinner time. Last night, we would have already paid our bill and left by now. Was the outside a repeating loop of last night? A parallel timeline? I gently turned the handle and pulled the door open a crack. A waiter in a red uniform walked right past, carrying a tray, his eyes fixed straight ahead as he went to the next room. I held my breath. He didn't look at me. Or maybe he couldn't see me? I opened the door wider, sticking half my body out. The main dining hall was bright and nearly full. The wave of heat, noise, and smells was overwhelming. I stood in the shadow of the doorway, like a ghost at a feast. No one glanced in my direction. It was as if the door to my room was perceived as closed, or simply not there. I pulled back, shut the door, my heart pounding. It seemed that in this world, I was in some kind of unobservable state. Or maybe my interactions were limited. How did the food order work then? Whatever the rules were, this was my lifeline. No, this was my cheat code. My cheat code for the apocalypse. 3. A bold plan quickly formed in my mind. I returned to the table, wolfed down everything edible, and then started looting. An unopened case of 24 water bottles. Hauled it through the door. The beers and sodas from the mini fridge. Mine. I crept into the kitchen. No one seemed to see me there either. Cases of grill marinade, frozen beef and pork, shrimp, all kinds of vegetables. Anything that was portable and useful on the other side, I took. I even found a few small power banks and a hand crank emergency radio. Those went too. I turned the corner of my bathroom, just outside the shower, into a small supply depot. Cool, safe, stocked with food and water. As I hauled the last box of instant ramen through, I collapsed on the floor, panting. I looked at the hellish heat of my apartment, then at the cool, well-stocked world I was stealing from. The whole situation was a mix of the absurd and the incredibly fortunate. I hadn't forgotten about the survival points. After all that work, the number on the receipt now read remaining survival points. 11. 2. So gathering key resources really did earn points. I still didn't know the exchange rate or what else they could do, but more was definitely better. After catching my breath, I decided to test the door's rules further. I took a bag of chips I'd brought over a normal bag of Lay's. I walked back into the barbecue joint, placed it on the table, and then returned to my bathroom. The bag of chips was still in my hand. I could bring things from that world to mine. What about the other way? I grabbed a nearly empty bottle of body wash from the bathroom counter and stepped back through the door. The bottle appeared on the table in the barbecue room, solid and real. It was a two-way street. But what about living things? I saw a cockroach in the corner of the tub, barely moving, on the verge of being cooked. I trapped it with a tissue and carried it through. On the cool carpet of the private room, the cockroach twitched its antennae and scurried away. It worked, at least for insects. People, probably not. Too risky. But this was enough. It meant I could use the door to constantly pull resources from last night. I was excitedly plotting what to liberate next when a furious banging erupted from the other side of my bathroom door, the one leading to my actual apartment. Now, open the damn door. I know you're in there. You son of a bitch. Don't play dead. It was the personal trainer from next door, Brock Jensen. The guy lived up to his name, built like a tank with a temper to match. He was always a domineering jerk, but his voice now sounded unhinged. I saw you haul a case of water up here yesterday. Share some, or I swear to God, I'll break this door down. My heart sank. That was the case I'd managed to snag online 2 days ago. I was already halfway through it. Right now, half a case of water was life itself. I held my breath, staying silent. Boom, bang, bang, bang. He started kicking the door. The old security door groaned under the assault. What could I do? Go out and fight him? The guy was huge, and in this heat, he was probably crazy enough to kill me. Don't open it? He'd genuinely kick it in. My eyes fell instinctively on the frosted glass door that led to my cool, private paradise. An almost mischievous idea popped into my head. I moved fast. I grabbed one of the coldest water bottles from my stash, twisted it open, and poured most of it out, leaving just an inch at the bottom. Then I walked to my real front door, took a deep breath, and unlocked the deadbolt. The sound of kicking and screaming got louder. I peered through the peephole. Brock was shirtless, his skin flushed crimson, drenched in sweat, his eyes bloodshot. He was holding a fire axe, probably from the emergency case in the hallway. 2 other equally desperate-looking neighbors stood behind him, their eyes filled with a greedy, crazed look. Brock, man, I really don't have much left. Just this last bit. Not even enough for me, I said, my voice deliberately weak and scared. I cracked the door open, the security chain still on, and passed the nearly empty bottle through the gap. Brock snatched it. When he saw how little was inside, his eyes got even wilder. He snarled at the crack in the door. Are you kidding me? This is it. You got more. Open the door. That's really all I have. Please, man, give me a break. I kept pleading. Meanwhile, my other hand was behind my back, facing the open shower door. I wiggled my fingers, making a silent come here gesture. I had no idea if the door could understand me, but it was worth a shot. No way. You're opening this door, one way or another. Brock raised the axe. Just as the axe was about to fall, a powerful, freezing blast of wind, carrying the overwhelming, savory scent of Korean barbecue, came roaring out from behind me, from the bathroom. It was as if my bathroom contained a giant industrial fan pointed directly at a sizzling grill. The icy gust, which must have felt bone-chilling to them, mixed with the incredibly strong, nostril-stinging smell of chili, garlic, and soy, hit the three men square in the face. Asiashu. Cough, cough. What the ACHO? My eyes. It burns. Cough, cough, cough. Brock took the full force of it. The axe nearly flew from his hands as he stumbled back, snot and tears streaming down his face. The other two were completely disoriented by the sudden chemical attack, coughing their lungs out. The cold blast hitting their sweaty skin only made it worse. While they were reeling, I pushed the door open a little wider. The chain held it fast, raised my phone, and snapped several flash photos of their miserable, spice-blasted faces. The flash was blinding in the dim hallway. "Hey, Brock," I said from behind the door, my voice no longer weak, but dripping with sarcasm. "When Law and Order comes back, if it ever does, what do you think will happen if I post these handsome pictures of you crying tears of joy to the residents' Facebook group? Caption is something like, 'Local tough guy moved to tears by half a bottle of water.' You'd be a legend in this building." Brock was frantically rubbing his stinging eyes, trying to see me. He was trembling with rage, caught between a sneeze and a curse. "Carter, you, what the hell did you do?" "Asiashul. I'm gonna. What did I do?" I lower my voice, mimicking a horror movie narrator. Maybe with so many people. Overheating. In this building, some unsettling things are getting stirred up. Things that are a little crazy from a heat, too. Things that just love the smell of spicy cold wind. That line, combined with the bizarrely scented cold air still pouring from my apartment and the genuinely apocalyptic setting, worked like a charm. The other two guys were now looking genuinely terrified, backing away toward the stairs. "Brock, man, maybe we should just go. This place. This is weird, man. Yeah, that wind. It's not right. Freezing, and it smells like food." Brock was furious and scared. The pain in his eyes and the creeping dread in his gut made him back down. He shot a final, hateful glare at my closed door, his expression now laced with suspicion and fear. You just wait, you little freak," he snarled, all bark and no bite. Then, clutching his nose and eyes, he and his two flunkies scrambled back toward their own apartments, sneezing and coughing the whole way. I slammed the door shut, threw the deadbolt, and slid the chain back on. Leaning my back against the blessedly cool metal of the door, I let out a long, slow breath. My legs were a little shaky. That was intense. I walked back into the bathroom. The frosted glass door was still ajar, the cool air from the barbecue joint still flowing in, though the wind had died down and the smell was fainter. I went to the doorway and looked across at the quiet, messy, private room. "Nice work," I said to the door, or to whatever spirit might be listening. The little paper receipt fluttered out from somewhere and landed at my feet. I picked it up. The text had been updated. Successfully repelled initial raid by creating an effective environmental deterrent. +2. 0 survival points. Unlocked. Gentle Breeze Voucher X1 allows for a brief, directed release of the door's internal environment. Remaining survival points, 13. 2. A voucher? Interesting. It looked like this door's glitch was a lot more than just a delivery service. It was my only ticket to surviving this insane apocalypse, and maybe even thriving in it. I looked out my apartment window at the world, still a furnace, a living hell. Then I looked through the shower door at the peace of last night, cool and peaceful. The savory scent of grilled meat still hung in the air. Run? Run where? My road to survival was right behind this door. 6. I held the updated receipt, rubbing my thumb over the coarse paper. 13. 2 survival points and a cheap-sounding Gentle Breeze voucher. But that cheap little voucher had just saved my life and served up a spicy slice of revenge. The cold air kept pouring through the doorway, an invisible lifeline pumping cool, breathable air into my roasting metal cage of an apartment. I looked at my hoard in the corner of the bathroom: water, food, power banks, the emergency radio. My panic finally began to subside, replaced by a much more powerful urge. Was I just going to survive? Huddle here like a rat in a sewer, guarding my lucky find? No. I looked at the frosted glass door, standing there silently. Behind, it was a paradise of air conditioning and endless Korean barbecue from the past. A wild, almost arrogant plan began to take shape in my newly chilled and well-fed brain. I remembered the look in Brock's eyes as he left, suspicious, hateful, and scared. He wouldn't give up. In this building, there would be more people like him. When the last shred of civility melted away in the heat, my secret, the cool air seeping from under my door, would become a death sentence. I had to get proactive. First, information. I sat on the cool tile floor and fiddled with the hand crank radio. I tuned it to the emergency broadcast frequencies. Besides static, all I got was a pre-recorded government message on repeat, telling people to seek shelter underground and await rescue. The announcer's voice sounded more grim with each loop. There was no mention of the cause, scope, or expected duration of the heat wave. The other channels were dead air or filled with panicked screaming and white noise. Standard apocalypse stuff. Total information blackout. I put the radio down and picked up my phone, which still had a decent charge. The Wi-Fi was spotty, but the residents' Facebook group had turned into a live feed from hell. Someone posted a picture of their houseplant catching fire. Someone else uploaded a tearful voice memo saying their grandmother had passed. Pleas for water, medicine, and help were interspersed with the sounds of people screaming in the background. Then I saw a new post. Brock had tagged me. At Leo Carter, what the hell are you hiding in your apartment? Where did that cold air and weird smell come from? You got some kind of industrial cooling unit? In times like this, hoarding resources is the same as murder. I demand you come clean and share with the rest of us. Classic. Using moral outrage to rally a mob. Sure enough, a few other active users chimed in. Yeah, Leo, what's up? We smelled it too. You got a way to stay cool. Don't hold out on us, man. We're all neighbors here. Brock's right. We have to share resources to survive. I let out a cold laugh and typed a reply. At Brock Jensen. Did you get all the chili out of your eyes yet? I've still got the pictures. The tears really sell the drama. As for the cold air, my bathtub drain goes straight to hell. The damned souls send up a spicy smelling breeze. You should come try it. It'll chill you right to the bone. Image attached. A blurry water-stained photo of my body wash bottle, framed to look like some weird piece of equipment. I hit send. Ignoring the flood of question marks and new tags, I silenced my phone and tossed it aside. Bluffing would only work for so long. A guy like Brock would be back, and he'd be ready. I needed a more powerful surprise. My gaze fell on a magic door and a gentle breeze voucher in my hand. Voucher? I'm used. What if it's more than a gentle breeze? And what if it does more than just hit you in the face? A much bolder and frankly reckless experiment began to form in my mind. I did some prep work first. I took a few empty water bottles from my stash, filled them with tap water from the other side, and screwed the caps on tight. I also grabbed a couple of old towels. Then, holding the voucher, I focused trying to communicate with the door. Hey, door, my man. Let's make a deal. This gentle breeze, can we crank it up a notch? Instead of just a breeze, how about a gale? And instead of just my face, how about my whole living room? And maybe it could bring a little something extra with it. No response. But the voucher in my hand felt slightly warm. What I mean is, I said, gesturing toward the sweltering darkness of my living room. I want you to blow the wind out there. For a while. As a trade or a test. I held up the water bottles and towels. Still nothing. I was starting to feel dejected. Maybe it was just a one-time use, fixed effect item. Well, nothing to lose. I held up the voucher and said, as formally as I could, I am using the gentle breeze voucher. Target. Living room area. Maximum power, sustained duration, mixed with, the door's current ambient essence. I felt like a total nerd chanting a spell at a wall. And then whoosh, a blast of cold air, far stronger and more focused than the one that had repelled Brock, shot out of the doorway. This time, it didn't dissipate in the bathroom. It shot out like an invisible dragon, a column of frigid wind that blasted into the dark, suffocating living room. Everywhere the cold air touched, the oppressive heat was violently shoved aside. The living room curtains billowed wildly, and loose papers on my coffee table scattered. More importantly, the thick, unmistakable aroma of Korean barbecue marinade filled every corner of the room. It worked, and it seemed to follow my vague mental commands. I didn't waste a second. I placed one of the full water bottles directly in the path of the wind. The icy, barbecue-scented gale blasted the plastic bottle for several minutes. When I touched it, it was cold. Not just room temperature, but cold like it had been sitting in an air-conditioned room for an hour. This was it. I immediately placed all the bottles and spread the towels out in the wind's path. I kept my eye on the voucher. Its edges began to glow faintly, the light flickering unsteadily. After about 10 minutes, the wind started to weaken, the smell fading. 2 minutes later, it stopped completely. The voucher dissolved into motes of light and vanished from my hand. I rushed into the living room. The surrounding heat was already creeping back in, but the temperature was noticeably lower. A faint, mouth-watering barbecue smell lingered. Most importantly, the water bottles on the floor were all chilled. The towels were cold and damp, a godsend when draped over my neck. I grabbed a bottle and chugged half of it. The cold water slid down my throat, chasing away the last of the oppressive heat. Incredible. Successfully utilized the door's ancillary energy field for limited, short-term temperature reduction and energy transference in the current space. +1. 5 survival points. New insight unlocked. The door's essence possesses weak reality infusion and energy exchange properties. Remaining survival points, 14. 7. A new receipt fluttered to the ground. Reality infusion? Energy exchange? Sounded like something out of a sci-fi novel. But in plain English, it meant the cold, smelly wind from the door wasn't just for scaring people. It could actually temporarily change the physical state of my environment. It was weak and short-lived, but the possibilities, they were huge. For the next 2 days, I live a life of post-apocalyptic home improvement. I stayed close to the bathroom, my new command center. When I was hungry or thirsty, I just stepped through the door for takeout, Korean barbecue, sushi Tex-Mex. I even managed to risk a jump to a different time slice in a neighboring restaurant walk-in freezer to grab some ice-cold sodas. Thanks to the endless buffet of yesterday, I wasn't just surviving, I was gaining weight. I conducted all sorts of infusion experiments. I heated a spoon with a lighter until it was red hot, then quickly passed it through the door and back. It cooled down much faster than normal. I placed a wilting houseplant in the doorway's breeze, and the next day, it looked a little better. The craziest thing I tried was concentrating on a piece of paper, trying to will it to look like an important government formula for a coolant. After leaving it in the breeze for a while, the paper felt strangely cool and damp to the touch, and the pen ink had bled slightly, making it look old and mysterious. Of course, the effect was faint and unreliable, and it left me mentally drained. I had a hunch it was tied to my level of belief, or maybe my mental projection, and was probably influenced by my survival points. The more points I had, the stronger my connection to the door felt. Through my constant looting and infusion experiments, my survival points slowly climbed to 16. 8. I even used the infused cold towels and chilled water to make a few makeshift cold packs, sealing them in Ziploc bags. They could be valuable for a trip outside or as currency. Outside, things were getting worse. Power and water outages were now the norm. The residents' Facebook group had become a gallery of horrors, screams, curses, desperate prayers, followed by long stretches of silence. Anyone who could still move was probably making a break for the rumored military-run underground shelters. Those who couldn't move, their voices just disappeared. Brock never came back to kick down my door, but through my peephole, I saw him and a couple of others lurking in the hallway. They scanned the doors of our neighbors like hungry wolves. They seemed to be waiting for something, or maybe building up their courage. The other survivors in the building were also starting to look at my door with a new, unsettling interest. The memory of the ghostly wind, combined with the faint coolness that sometimes seeped from under my door, I intentionally left the gap, had become a beacon in the suffocating darkness. I knew the final confrontation was inevitable. My secret was too valuable to keep in a world this desperate. On the afternoon of the third day, the worst happened. The world on the other side of the door had a problem. When I opened the door, ready to pop over to my usual barbecue spot for some fresh fruit, the scene that greeted me made me freeze. It wasn't a sizzling, bustling private room. It was a dark, damp hospital corridor, filled with the faint, sterile smell of bleach and mold. Pale fluorescent lights cast a cold glow on the polished linoleum floor, reflecting my distorted image. The hallway was empty and terrifyingly silent, except for the distant, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. The walls were lined with closed doors, their small observation windows dark and empty. I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding. What happened? Did the coordinates shift? Did my last night at the barbecue subscription run out? I waited a few seconds, then cautiously cracked the door open again. Still the hospital hallway. Nothing had changed, but the rhythm of the distant beeping. Was it a little faster now? A cold sweat trickled down my back. The door was the foundation of my survival. If the destination became random, or worse, dangerous, I forced myself to calm down and assess the situation. The connection point had changed, but the door's portal function was still intact. The temperature on the other side was much lower than my apartment. A clammy, unsettling cold, but better than a furnace. And a hospital, that meant there might be medicine. In this new world, medicine was worth more than food. The urge to take the risk overpowered my fear. I grabbed an empty backpack and tucked a small meat cleaver I'd borrowed from the barbecue joint into the back of my jeans. It probably wouldn't do much, but it was a confidence booster. I took a deep breath and squeezed through the door. The chilling air enveloped me instantly. It was probably around 70 degrees, which felt like a crisp autumn day to me after living in a 140-degree hell. But this coolness was tainted with the sharp smell of antiseptic and an unidentifiable, unsettling coldness. The hallway was long, disappearing into the dim light. I hugged the wall, holding my breath, and crept toward the nearest room. A small plaque on the door read 703. I tried the handle. Locked. I peered through the window. The curtains were drawn, and the room was dark. I could just make out the shapes of a few beds, figures lying still under white sheets. Silence. A dead silence. All I could hear was my own racing heart and that steady, unnerving beeping from down the hall. I didn't want to linger or make any noise. My goal was medicine or any useful supplies. I tried the next door, marked treatment room. It was unlocked. The room was empty, filled with equipment carts and counters. I started rummaging. I hit the jackpot. In a cabinet with a broken lock, I found several unopened bags of saline, a pack of syringes, rolls of gauze, and bottles of iodine and rubbing alcohol. I also found some common antibiotics, painkillers, and fever reducers. Like a thief in the night, I swept everything I could find into my backpack. Just as I zipped it up, ready to bolt, the steady beeping from down the hall changed. It became a shrill, rapid, continuous alarm. 9, beep, 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 beep. The ear-splitting sound shattered the hospital silence. A wave of pure terror washed over me. I slung the backpack on and scrambled for the door. But I was too late. From both sides of the hallway, several of the closed room doors began to shake violently. Bang, bang, bang. It wasn't knocking. It was the sound of something heavy throwing itself against the doors, accompanied by an inhuman, raspy, gurgling sound, like air being forced through a broken pipe. My scalp tingled. My limbs went cold. I practically fell over myself, running back to my portal, the glowing outline of the shower door in the middle of the wall. Just as my hand reached for the handle, a door not far behind me crashed open with a deafening crack. A figure in a tattered, blue and white, striped hospital gown stumbled out. Its head was bowed, its hair a matted mess, and its skin had an unnatural, grayish pallor. It moved with a stiff, jerky speed, lurching directly toward me, or rather, toward the sound I was making. I could smell it now, a thick, putrid stench of rot and chemicals. Shit! I screamed a curse, pure survival instinct taking over. I wrenched the door handle, threw myself through the opening, and slammed it shut with all my might. Thud! A heavy weight hit the other side of the door, making the frosted glass vibrate. I slid down to the floor, my back pressed against the cool glass, gasping for air, drenched in a cold sweat. The medical supplies in my backpack dug into my spine, but it was the most beautiful pain in the world. Outside, the banging continued a few more times, then stopped. But the raspy gurgling and the sound of fingernails scraping against glass went on for a long time before finally fading away. I lay on the floor for what felt like an eternity. Only when I was sure the other side was silent did I shakily reach for the receipt that had appeared on the floor. New text materialized, chillingly calm. Successfully explored new connection point. Mercy Peak Hospital, 7th floor, abandoned, moderate danger. Acquired critical survival resources, medical supplies. +3. 0 survival points. Warning. This connection point has low spatiotemporal stability and contains unpredictable risks. Explore with extreme caution. Remaining survival points, 19. 8. Hospital? Abandoned? Moderate danger? Low stability? 10. I thought back to the gray skin, the inhuman shriek, the violent thrashing. That was not a living person. Not a normal one. Anyway, what the hell was this door connected to? The easy days of the Korean barbecue buffet were over. The door was now showing its unpredictable, dangerous side. But high risk came with high reward. In this world, medicine was priceless. And my survival points had jumped by 3, the biggest gain so far. Crisis and opportunity. My cheat code wasn't safe. I took stock of the supplies in my backpack, my mind racing. These meds were a strategic reserve. The hospital connection, as terrifying as it was, could be an ace up my sleeve. Just then, the banging on my apartment door started again. This time, it was louder, more chaotic. There were more of them. Now, open up. It's your friendly neighborhood welcoming committee. It was Brock's voice, dripping with malice and the smug confidence of someone who has brought backup. We know you've got a stash in there. Don't hide. We're all in this together, right? Sharing is caring. Yeah, open up. Hand over the food, water, and whatever's making it cold in there. Don't make us get rough, Leo. At least 4 or 5 voices were shouting. The banging intensified, and I heard the screech of a crowbar trying to find purchase in the door jamb. They had finally decided to force their way in. As a group, I gripped the meat cleaver, but I knew it was useless against 4 or 5 desperate, strong men. My eyes darted to the frosted glass door, my portal to the hospital of horrors, then to the backpack full of medicine, then to the makeshift cold packs I had made with the infusion technique. A crazy plan clicked into place. Stop! Don't break it down! I yelled, my voice shaky and desperate. All part of the act. Brock, guys, okay, you win. I'll share what I have. I have some stuff I stocked up in. Some secret family remedy for the heat. It helps with the heat. The noise outside paused. Brock's voice came back, suspicious but greedy. Cooling medicine? What the hell is that? Cut the crap and open the door. I'll open it, but I'm not letting all of you in at once. I'm scared, I said quickly. Brock, you and one other person can come in and take the stuff. The rest of you, stay back. Everything I have is in the living room. Take it and go, okay. I heard them murmuring outside. Then Brock said, fine. You try anything funny, and we'll tear you apart. Just me and Skeeter are coming in. The rest of you, wait here. I heard footsteps retreating. I moved fast. I put the makeshift cold packs, the infused, chilly, damp towels in Ziploc bags on the coffee table, right where they'd see them. Next to them, I put a few bottles of chilled water and 2 packs of crackers, just for show. Then I backed up to the bathroom door, one hand on the handle of the portal to the hospital, the other gripping the meat cleaver. Okay, I'm opening it. Stay back, I yelled. I slowly undid the deadbolt and the chain. The second the door cracked open, a wave of heat and the sour stench of stale sweat hit me. Brock and a skinny, weaselly-looking guy, Skeeter, I presumed, shoved their way in. A few others peered in from the hallway. Brock's eyes scanned the room like a hawk. He immediately spotted the cold packs and water on the table, and a flash of triumph crossed his face. The fact that my living room was noticeably less hot than the hallway and still had that faint, weird barbecue smell only confirmed his suspicions. This is it. Brock strode over and slapped one of the cold packs on his forehead, groaning with pleasure. He then shot me a suspicious look, his eyes scanning the closed bedroom and kitchen doors. You're holding out on us, Carter. This stuff can't be making that cold air and weird smell. What else you got? Where is it? Skeeter's shifty eyes darted around the room and landed on the partially open bathroom door behind me. Hey, Brock, I think there's cold air coming from the bathroom. Brock's eyes narrowed. He marched toward me. Move. This was it. 11, I jumped backward, pressing myself against the bathroom door. A strange, twisted smile spread across my face. You want to know the secret, Brock? It's right in here. I yanked the frosted glass door wide open. An arctic blast of air, thick with the smell of antiseptic and a faint hint of rot, roared out of the doorway. It collided with the living room's heat, creating a miniature vortex that sent Brock and Skeeter's hair and clothes whipping around their faces. What the F? Brock's words died in his throat. Through the open portal, he and Skeeter saw it. A long, sterile hospital corridor under pale fluorescent lights. The polished floor reflected their own shocked, twisted faces. The distant, unnerving beep, beep of the monitor echoed clearly. What? What is that? Skeeter stammered, his face as white as a sheet. It's the family ice house and pharmacy, I said, stepping aside. My voice sounded distorted in the cold wind. Nice and cool, right? All the medicine you could want. Only, sometimes it gets a little loud. A little lively. You guys want to go in and get some cooling medicine for yourselves? In their eyes, my smile must have looked more terrifying than any monster. Greed and disbelief warred on Brock's face. The scene was impossible. 1 minute, he was in a normal apartment building in Austin. The next, he was staring into a haunted hospital. But the cold was real, the beeping was real, and the genuinely cold packs on the table suddenly had an explanation. In this hellish heat that could drive a man insane, the promise of a cool refuge was enough to make anyone take a chance. Son of a... You're bluffing, Brock spat, but his eyes were glued to the hallway, where a treatment room door stood ajar. There's medicine in there? You go first. He pointed at me, clearly intending for me to be his canary in a coal mine. Sure, I said, surprisingly cooperative. I even managed a small smile as I took the first step, my bare feet landing on the freezing linoleum of the hospital. The cold shot through me, but my adrenaline was pumping. Brock and Skeeter exchanged a look, then, gritting their teeth, they followed me in. The moment they crossed the threshold, they both shuddered violently. Jesus! It's freezing in here, Skeeter said, rubbing his arms, his eyes darting nervously toward the closed patient rooms. Beep, beep. The sound was like a metronome for a funeral march. The medicine's in there, I said, pointing to the treatment room I'd looted. Plenty of it. But what? Brock growled, pulling a knife from his pocket. But the patients here, they don't like to be disturbed. I let my gaze drift over the silent, closed doors. Brock's face paled slightly, but the sight of the treatment room, with the visible outline of supply cabinets, was too tempting. Cut the crap. Skeeter, you watch him. I'll get the stuff. He motioned for Skeeter to keep the knife on me while he hurried toward the room. He pushed the door open. It was dark inside, but the light from the hallway was enough to see the counters and cabinets. Ah, it's real. Brock's voice echoed, filled with glee. He'd spotted a few boxes of supplies I'd missed. He eagerly bent down to grab them. And that's when it happened. H-H-H-H. H-H-H-H. A faint, raspy breath, so close it sounded like it was right next to us, came from the room next door. Skeeter jumped, nearly dropping the knife. Brock? Did you hear that? He whispered, his eyes wide with terror. Brock heard it too. He froze, then slowly straightened up, his eyes fixed on the door. The observation window was pitch black. It's just the wind, Brock said, trying to sound tough, but his voice cracked. He started grabbing the supplies more frantically. Beep, 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 beep. Without warning, the monitor at the end of the hall shrieked its alarm. At the same instant, the door that had been breathing and several others down the hall began to shake with violent bangs. What the hell is happening? Brock screamed, dropping the medicine he'd just grabbed. Bang, bang, bang. The impacts echoed down the empty hall. The raspy gurgling grew louder, as if multiple things were now stirring behind the doors. Ghosts! It's ghosts! Skeeter finally broke. He shrieked, forgetting all about me, and scrambled back toward the glowing doorway that led back to my apartment. Wait for me. Brock was even more terrified. He moved faster than Skeeter, practically crawling on all fours to get to the portal that represented the normal world. Just as Brock's fingers were about to touch the door frame, I, who had been quietly pressed against the wall, delivered a swift, hard kick to his upturned ass. Have a nice trip. Arg! Brock yelped, caught off guard. He stumbled sideways, slamming into the wall instead of going through the door. Skeeter, who was right behind him and running blindly, couldn't stop. He shot straight past the portal and crashed into the door of one of the shaking rooms with a sickening thud. Skeeter, you idiot, Brock started to yell, but he froze when he turned and saw me, already halfway through the portal. I gave him a cold, vicious smile. Hey, Brock, you know what they say, sharing is caring. You stay here and enjoy the cool air and the company. Let me know if the patients appreciate your sweaty, athletic musk. Then, as he stared at me with a look of pure, unadulterated terror, I slammed the frosted glass door shut. I immediately jammed a mop handle I'd prepared earlier into the handle, locking it from my side. No! Brock's desperate, agonized scream, mixed with the sound of doors crashing open and heavy, shuffling footsteps behind him, was cut off by the thick glass, reduced to a muffled, distant cry. 12 I leaned against the door, listening to the frantic pounding and muffled screams from the other side. I could hear other sounds too, more doors breaking open, a chorus of gurgles, and a horrifying, wet, tearing noise. A few seconds later, the pounding turned into a high-pitched, inhuman shriek, followed by the sound of shattering glass. I prayed it wasn't my door. Then silence. A dead, final silence. All I could hear was my own ragged breathing and the hesitant footsteps of the other would-be robbers in my living room, who had been frozen in place by the commotion. I took a moment to steady my racing heart, then wiped the sweat from my brow. I took a deep breath and threw open the bathroom door. I walked into the living room, facing the pale, horrified neighbors. "What are you looking at?" I said, picking up the knife Brock had dropped and weighing it in my hand. I let my eyes drift from their terrified faces to the now silent, unnervingly peaceful frosted glass door. Brock and Skeeter decided they liked my family's Icehouse Pharmacy so much, they're staying for the extended tour. I cracked a smile that had no warmth in it. "Anyone else want to take a look? The air conditioning is to die for." My gaze landed on a heavy-set guy who had been the loudest one yelling earlier. The moment our eyes met, he flinched as if he'd been burned. He took a clumsy step back, shaking his head frantically. The others were paralyzed with fear, their eyes darting between me and the door that had just swallowed 2 men whole. "No. No thanks. It was a misunderstanding, man. We'll just go, Leo. Sorry to bother you." They practically fell over each other as they scrambled out of my apartment, not even daring to look back. I walked over, shut the door, bolted it, and chained it. The world was quiet again. I went to the coffee table, picked up a bottle of chilled water, and took a long, slow drink. The cold liquid soothed the churning in my stomach. I walked back and stood before the frosted glass door. It was pristine, without a single drop of blood on it, but I knew what had just happened on the other side. A receipt fluttered silently to my feet. Successfully neutralized a lethal threat by utilizing the connected environment, establishing ultimate deterrence against potential hostiles. +5. 0. Survival points. Special reward. Connection point stabilizer voucher, X1, can be used to slightly correct or stabilize one random connection point. Remaining survival points, 24. 8. Warning. Use connection points with caution. Over-reliance or misuse may lead to unpredictable consequences. I picked up the receipt, looking at the new number and the stark warning. 24. 8 survival points. A stabilizer voucher. And the cost. 2 human lives. Or maybe just 2 ghosts, consumed by their own greed. I went to the window and peeled back a corner of the blackout curtain. Outside, the world was still a molten hellscape, the air shimmering with heat. But inside this silent apartment building, I had a feeling no one would be bothering me again anytime soon. I had a door to dangerous, unknown worlds that could provide me with critical resources. I had the fledgling ability to infuse my surroundings, to create deterrence and useful tools. I had a handful of survival points and a single chance to stabilize a connection. The apocalypse was far from over. The heat showed no signs of breaking. But I was no longer the helpless victim huddled in a bathtub, waiting to die. I went to my supply hoard, grabbed a self-heating MRE, and cracked open an ice-cold Coke. As I ate my hot meal, I looked out at the hellish landscape. The sensations of spice, flavor, and heat, the feeling of being alive, had never been so sharp, so exhilarating. The frosted glass door stood silently, like a watchful eye. I knew that its story, and my story in this scorched world, had only just begun. Run? No. The only ones who needed to run were the people who saw me as prey. And me? I was going to use this glitched-out, dimension-hopping door to carve out my own spicy, savage, and very much alive path through this ready-made hell.